Hello, fight fans. Seattle Mike, MMA with friends. Everybody, please hit that like button or I will kick you in the belly. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our new videos. Hit that bell so you're notified whenever we drop a new video or go live. Today's conversation is not an easy one. Luckily, in the UFC, we have not had a death yet. The effects of Sam Stout recently talking about being permanently mentally disabled, though, was heart-wrenching for fans like myself, for Dana White, the president of the UFC, and for everyone that's seen him enter those wars, and maybe a few too many. A little over a week ago, we seen one of the most courageous fighters probably in the history of the UFC at 39 years old go down to a flying knee. He's lost 4 of his last 6 fights in the UFC, 3 by knockout. This was after not being finished in his entire career up to a couple of years ago. Frankie Edgar, much like BJ Penn at one time, still holds a lot of valor and a lot of respect in this sport. But with every loss, like that flying knee from Corey Sandhagen, the knockout that came via Brian Ortega or Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, the sport moves on. And the newer fans forget who some of these guys were. Go back a few years ago and you've seen who was once the greatest light heavyweight of all time, a man entering the cage at almost 50 years old, being demolished by a middle-aged Tito Ortiz. Chuck Liddell may never be thought of the same, and this was a Tito Ortiz that he disposed of twice easily. Of course, in his prime, made Tito Ortiz look like he didn't belong in the same cage. This year, we also bid adieu to one of the greatest middleweights, not one of the greatest middleweights of all time, but a guy a lot of us talked about at one time as the GOAT, the pound-for-pound GOAT, the greatest fighter on the planet, Anderson the Spider Silva. And his career, unfortunately, ends against Uriah Hall with a whimper. After that terrifying leg injury against Chris Weidman, and then a subpar issue and more leg injuries to Jared Cannonier, it seemed that he was at least a shell of his former self when he lost a unanimous decision, but yet competitive at times and an entertaining fight to Israel Adesanya last year. Against Uriah Hall, unfortunately, he was not competitive. Then just 2 days ago, this last Super Bowl Saturday, a former K1 champion, former Strikeforce Grand Prix champion, former Dream champion, a guy that destroyed Brock Lesnar coming in to the UFC and looked to be on another run at the title, winning 4 of his last 5, the one loss being arguable to Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Alistair Overeem seemed to age overnight against Alexander Volkov. He was not sharp. His wrestling that has gotten much better over the last few years looked as bad as it has ever been. And he not only did he not take a shot, he did not have good head movement, he did not have good defense. He did land a few good right hands on Alexander Volkov, but Volkov was just too much for him. He was too fast, he was too quick, and one of the things, Alistair Overeem, he was just not able to get away from the punches. Some of them he wasn't able to see coming, but the ones that he could see coming, he was unable to block, he was unable to move his head, and we could look at some of these performances, Frankie's performance, Alistair Overeem's performance, And we could say, maybe it's a night off. Or maybe two fighters aged overnight. On that same card of Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov, we've seen two aging former contenders, Clay Guida and Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson losing for the 7th time in 9 fights to a 39-year-old Clay Guida. This is a guy who, has a knockout over Dustin Poirier, landed probably, the best shot that anybody has on Khabib Nurmagomedov, and once was thought of as, one of the most dangerous punchers in the lightweight division. Michael Johnson, at only 34 years old, proves that, you don't have to be knocking on the door of 40 to have it look like your career is done. And it really looked like after Saturday that this is just not, the right job for Michael Johnson at this point. Diego Sanchez, a lot of people, including myself, thought that he should have retired a long time ago. Donald Cerrone, has fallen very easily to vicious finishes in his last several fights, lasting less than a minute against Conor McGregor. Those two, we could only hope, would have a retirement fight. One of those guys will probably fight on at least after a victory, and very, very seldom do we get the story that we got in bare knuckle boxing this last Friday, with Chris Lieben coming back at 40 years old, or north of 40, and getting a thunderous first-round knockout and leaving the sport, the way every legend wants to leave. That's what they want, is one more. They want one big finish, one big knockout. That's what, Mauricio Shogun Rua said that he wanted. But then you get that knockout. You get that great performance, and the game pulls you back in. Fighters that know nothing more, some of them, rather than to get inside of a cage and trade shots and blood with another like-minded warrior. It's a tough decision that only a fighter can make. He will take the input from his family, from his friends, maybe from commentators, maybe from fans. But at the end of the day, the choice is only his or hers, unless it's even worse and the promotion no longer has a spot for you. Anderson Silva not invited back to fight after his last knockout loss to Uriah Hall. BJ Penn, after issues outside of the cage, having his farewell fight torn away from him, due to drunken brawls, DUIs, and things that maybe he wouldn't be doing at around 40 years old if not for the shots that he had taken in the sport that he loves, not only inside of the octagon, but inside of sparring matches, inside of gyms. And this sport we love can be very bitter. And I think Frankie Edgar said it best after his loss to Corey Sandhagen on Saturday. He said, "Luckily, I don't remember much, but this sport can be a cruel bitch." And I will leave it with that. It is not my decision, not our decision as journalists or fans to tell a fighter when he's put his gloves on for the last time. But sometimes continuing to watch these fighters fight after we feel that they've had their last great fight sure can be a cruel bitch. Let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think? What are your guys' thoughts headed into this as we seemingly go into a new era in fighting? So many great fighters are in their mid to upper 30s right now, maybe even approaching 40? Will we have enough fighters with the personalities that draw the fan base and, make us love to watch them the way that the last generations of fighters have? Will these warriors be forgotten? Diego Sanchez and Chris Leben were the last two fighters from the original 2005 season of Ultimate Fighter. Chris Leben retired after his victory on Friday. Diego Sanchez looking to have his last fight on May 8th. And I can only vehemently agree with him on that. But I'm curious to see what you guys have to say, what some examples you might have of fighters you think that, maybe went one fight too long, fighters you wish would retire, or maybe fighters that you think, had something left to give and they could have stuck around for a few more and they got out. Andre Ward in boxing was, the exception, not the rule, got out undefeated as the champion, says he has no desire to get back in the ring. Those guys are far and few between, though. The only other good example I can think of was Rocky Marciano at 49-0. And then, of course, Floyd Mayweather Jr. at 50-0. Keeps being drawn back. Every time you get out, they bring you back in. And whether it counts on his record like it did against Conor McGregor, or whether it's the exhibition fight he has against a younger Paul brother coming up, or against a kickboxer in an exhibition in Japan like in Rizin against Tenshin Nasukawa, he seems also not to be able to quite let the game step away. Thanks for tuning into this video, guys. I hope you liked it. Let me know. Share this video with as many people as you can, please. That's the big thing. Yes, the likes, the subscribes. Thank you for those. Those really help. I want to take this to the next level, though. And if we all share these videos on Twitter and Facebook and things, I would really appreciate it. And I think that's really going to be what it takes to get this channel and community to the next level. As always, I love you. I respect you. And I'll see your fine asses later.